United Nations Security Council held a special session on the situation in the Middle East following the bombing of 3 Iranian nuclear facilities by the United States. And the recent aggression of the United States against Iranian nuclear facilities has sparked worldwide demonstrations. In Panamanian, police arrested more than 140 people protesting against the privatization of Social Security in the province of Bocas del Toro. Hello and welcome to From the South. My name is Belén de los Santos. I'm from TeleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We'll begin with the news. We now begin with the information. The United Nations Security Council held a special meeting on the situation in the Middle East following the airstrikes carried out by the United States on 3 Iranian nuclear facilities. At the Council, China condemned the attacks against Iran and the bombing of nuclear facilities, which violate the UN Charter and undermine the Non-Proliferation Treaty. They also called for an immediate ceasefire, particularly from Israel. Russia also condemned the U.S. actions, which it described as irresponsible against the sovereign state of the United Nations, accusing the U.S. of opening Pandora's box, ignoring all the IAEA warnings about the global repercussions. For their part, UK and French representatives maintained the U.S. and Western lines on the conflict, but also stressed the importance of returning to diplomacy and negotiations. Meanwhile, U.S. representative continued Trump's threats of new deadly attacks if any Iranian response on U.S. targets takes place.
While the representative of the United States continues to make baseless accusations against Iran, the international community is well aware of the well-documented and dark record of military intervention, illegal use of force against other sovereign states, and sponsorship of terrorism by the United States in the Middle East and across the world. The facts speak for themselves. All U.S. allegations against Iran are unfounded, with no legal basis and politically motivated.
And in this context, the U.S. president addressed a change of government in Iran through his social network Truth Social. There, Trump stated that it's not politically correct to use the term regime change, but if the current Iranian regime is unable to make Iran great again, why wouldn't there be a regime change? This is one of the recent statements on U.S. president on the situation following U.S. strikes. Meanwhile, on Sunday, Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian joined thousands of demonstrators at Tehran's Englab Square, rallying against crimes committed by the United States and the Israeli occupation against the Iranian people. The rally in central Tehran aimed to condemn the combined aggressions of the governments of Israel and the United States after the latter escalated the ongoing conflict by attacking Iranian nuclear facilities. In these demonstrations, demonstrators, mostly students and faculty members, were joined by President Masoud Pezeshkian, who further denounced the crimes of the U.S. and the Zionist regime on Iranian territories. In this context, local news agencies reported that participants chanted slogans condemning the aggression and calling for national unity in defense of sovereignty. The protest marked growing public support for Iran's armed forces and stressed the collective outrage over the strikes on vital infrastructure. Meanwhile, the Iranian parliament voted to close the Strait of Hormuz following U.S. strikes on 3 key Iranian nuclear facilities. The proposal now needs to be greenlit by the government's Supreme National Security Council. According to experts, the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz in response to the Israeli and U.S. attacks would be a catastrophe for world markets due to the global dependence on crude oil coming from this international passage. Rising oil prices could lead to energy shortages in fuel-dependent regions of the Middle East, including Asia, Europe, and North America. Meanwhile, the Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of Our America, the People's Trade Treaty, ALBA TCP, issued a statement to strongly condemn the U.S. attack on Iran. The text begins by saying that the countries of the Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of Our America, ALBA, condemned in the strongest terms the criminal military attack perpetrated by the U.S. government against peaceful civilian and nuclear facilities in the Islamic Republic of Iran, particularly the Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan sites. It also states that this flagrant aggression violates the Charter of the United Nations, international law, and the most elementary principles of peaceful coexistence, constituting an inadmissible warfare act that endangers global security and further destabilizes the region. It violates the international nuclear safety regime and IAEA standards and safeguards. Moreover, the text indicates that ALBA expresses its firm and unwavering solidarity with the Iranian people, victims once again of the warmongering and interventionist policy of the United States, which continues to act with impunity, disregarding the right to self-determination of peoples and threatening world peace. The communique ends by highlighting that ALBA demands the immediate cessation of these illegal and unilateral actions and calls upon the international community to express its firm opposition to this unacceptable attack on Iran's sovereignty and territorial integrity. ALBA reaffirms its steadfast commitment to peace, justice, respect for international law, and peaceful coexistence among nations, and warns of the serious consequences that this dangerous military escalation could have for global stability. Meanwhile, in the United States, citizens mobilized across the country in rejection of Trump's actions against Iran. The demonstrators condemned Washington's direct intervention in the Middle East conflict in support of the Zionist regime of Israel. In this sense, they denounced that the attacks perpetrated by Trump violate international law, in addition to supporting a criminal and unjustified war by Israel against the Islamic Republic of Iran. The protesters also asserted that Trump's actions are part of U.S. policy to create a war in the Middle East.
Trump and other leaders still have not figured out.
And in this context, from New York, our correspondent Henry Camelo gives us details about the protests that took place on Times Square on Sunday in this U.S. city.
Hello and greetings from New York City, where we had a new day of protest. This protest happened in Times Square, where around 300 people gathered today, just raising their voices against a new war, about the incursion of the United States in a new conflict with Iran after they learned that 3 nuclear plants were bombed. Today I have one of the protesters who was participating of this march. Your name?
Hello, my name is Zahra Sadat.
Tell me, what was your motivation to join this march?
I'm Iranian American, and it's important and the right thing to do to stand with people, for people's lives, for people not to be getting bombed. Children have been bombed by Israel. The first martyr was a little girl. Hospitals have been attacked, a number of hospitals, including a hospital for burnt victims. So imagine that if you're one of those people, you're already burnt, and then you get burned by a bomb. So it's important. For everyone, especially Iranians. Even if Iranians are against their government, that doesn't mean then for us to support Israel, who has been bombing the Iranian people, backed by the USA. That's no.
How about your family? How's your family? I know that you're Iranian. How's your family right now?
My family, as far as I know, last I know, they're safe, God willing. Thank God, they are.
What did they tell you about the incursion of the United States? What did they hear Were they able to see something?
Well, I've heard news that I've talked with my mother, for example, and I also do my own research as well. I see online, I also see on Iranian TV, but aside from Iranian TV, so that just in case if I'm going to be accused of being biased, that no, I don't just look at Iranian TV. So I have seen online that video about little girl that was martyred by Israel, that a little girl who reminds me of myself because I'm also Iranian.
What do you think about the policies that this government is implementing in the foreign countries?
That the US government, they want everyone under their own control. They want to put back the Pahlavi, the regime, the previous, the king, the Shah. They want to put his son, the crown prince, they want to put him back in Iran, but the Iranian people got rid of his family, his father, for a reason. So the Iranian people don't really support his legacy. That even with that the majority of Iranian people, that even with Iranians who are against the government, that doesn't mean that they support Reza Pahlavi. That there are Iranians who I was seeing in the protests today that who don't wear hijab, that I've seen in protests in general, that Iranians who don't wear hijab and they're supporting Iran against Israel, that they may want, even if they want government change, that doesn't mean they want Reza Pahlavi, that they want backed by the US, that doesn't mean they support Israel, no.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, these kind of protests are going to happen in the upcoming weeks, and this specifically one happened in a really peaceful way. I'm Henry Camello, reporting from New York City. Back to you.
Now we have a short break coming up, but first remember you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates and much more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. We continue with more information. In this case, we go to the Middle East, to Palestine, as in the last 24 hours, Israeli occupation forces killed 51 civilians in Gaza and injured 100 more. The Palestinian Health Ministry registers nearly 56,000 people killed since the onset of the Israeli genocide in the Gaza Strip, most of them women and children. Authorities added that 131,242 people have been injured since October of 2023 as well. The real death toll is known to be much higher, as the Zionist regime prevents ambulances and civil defense teams from searching for the victims, so thousands remain under the rubble still. And overnight on Saturday, the Gaza Strip was the scene of more violence, with the Israeli airstrike that claimed the lives of at least 5 Palestinians in the Al-Tufa neighborhood east of the city of Gaza. Local media confirmed that the impact occurred in a residential area, adding this event to the growing list of attacks in the region, deepening concern for the security of the civilian population in Gaza. And after 10 weeks of blockade of humanitarian aid to Palestine and several killings on the roads heading to the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation centers, the situation is harsh and famine stalks the Palestinian population. Let's see more.
Daily gunfire by Israeli troops toward crowds on the roads heading to the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation centers has killed several hundred people and wounded hundreds more in past weeks, according to Gaza's health ministry. Israel seeks to have the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation replace the UN-run aid network in Gaza. One runs after his own sustenance and the sustenance of his children. I left with nothing at home but a plate of rice, and we went out to death. In truth, it's a good thing for us because one doesn't have anything to buy from what's available due to the prices. In the United States, no prices like this. Thousands of people must walk miles to reach the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation centers, 3 of which are in the far south outside the city of Rafah. Palestinians said the danger begins when the crowds enter the Israeli military zone encompassing Rafah. Those who managed to survive the Zionist massacres and reach the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation centers face a harsh reality: total food shortages. You enter the streets to arrive before the people, to the point of death, as I call it. I call it the point of death. The tank is in front of us. The machine gun is in front of us, and the quadcopter is above us, and there are soldiers on the ground with snipers. Anyone who moves before the time is shot, and the moment the tank retreats. We start running a long distance, about 600 meters. We run it from the place where we are to bring aid. Israel claims that it has only fired warning shots at suspects approaching its forces on the roads leading to the Humanitarian Foundation's food centers in Gaza. However, prior to the incidents of the past few days where Israel has intensified its killings, the Gaza Strip Ministry of Health claimed that at least 300 people had been killed and more than 2,600 injured near aid distribution points since the GAF began operations in Gaza on May 26.
Following his weekly Angelus prayer in the Vatican on Sunday, Pope Leo XIV called on the world not to forget the humanitarian crisis in Gaza as conflict in the Middle East escalated with overnight U.S. strikes on Iran.
Alarming news from the Middle East, especially from Iran, are coming one after the other. In this dramatic scenario that includes Israel and Palestine, the daily suffering of the population risks falling into oblivion, especially in Gaza and the other territories, where the urgency for adequate humanitarian support becomes more and more pressing.
Meanwhile, hundreds of South Africans mobilized in the city of Soweto to express their rejection of the genocidal aggression that the Israeli army is executing against the Gaza Strip. On Sunday, citizens walked along the main avenues of the city with banners and slogans showing their support for the Palestinian cause.
The children in Gaza are killed every day. Women and children are killed. Hospitals are bombed. So I'm here to
And the United Nations warned that an escalation of the conflict in Sudan would have deadly consequences for civilians caught in the crossfire. In a recent update of the emergency situation in the northeastern African nation, the Independent International Fact-Finding Mission for Sudan described the situation as a humanitarian crisis, highlighting the increased use of heavy weaponry in populated areas. According to United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees experts, there is widespread sexual violence, starving children, and blocked humanitarian aid, which has led to a severe humanitarian crisis, large-scale displacement, and a growing number of people in need. Despite the UN arms embargo imposed on Sudan, the mission has collected testimonies and stressed that the conflict continues. Now we have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our Facebook page at TeleSUR English. There you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverages, and much more. Follow our page and activate notifications to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back from the south. We continue with more information. The government of the Democratic Republic of the Congo extended a ban on cobalt exports for another 3 months. The Department for Regulation and Control of the Market of Strategic Mineral Substances informed that a decision was made to extend the temporary suspension due to the high levels of stocks in the market. The authority assesses the assignment of cobalt export quotas among mining companies. However, the country is the world's largest supplier of cobalt, so it announced the export ban after prices reached a 9-year low. Meanwhile, in China, Disaster Management and Strategic Reserves Authorities announced on Saturday that a batch of emergency supplies was sent to the flood-stricken central province of Yunnan. These supplies comprise 81,500 items, including tents, folding beds, quilts, and mattresses, and will help effectively relocate affected residents and ensure their basic living needs. Recently, that province has been hit by severe flooding, with the city of Shanghai and the Jiangxi, Tuxia, and Miao ethnic autonomous prefectures being the hardest hit areas. China has a 4-level emergency response system for flood control, with level 1 being the most severe. And in Ecuador, the Geophysical Institute registered a 5.5 earthquake in the southwestern province of Guayas. The quake occurred at 2 p.m. local time with an epicenter 17 kilometers from Naranjal and a depth of 40 kilometers. Authorities added that the quake was also felt in the Ecuadorian capital, Quito. So far, no victims or material damage has been reported, but monitoring continues for possible aftershocks. It should be noted that the country is located in the so-called Pacific Ring of Fire, a ring of geological faults that surrounds the ocean and in which 85% of the world's seismic activity takes place. In other news, Panamanian police arrested more than 140 people protesting against the privatization of Social Security in the province of Bocas del Toro. As part of the government's Omega operation, security forces detained people protesting on Saturday after the announcement of a measure that contemplates the suspension of constitutional guarantees. The action includes limitation to the freedom of transit, assembly, expression, and protection against arbitrary detentions. The decision by the Molino administration follows more than a month of protests and street closures in rejection of the reform of the social security system. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok as well. For TeleSUR English, my name is Belén de los Santos. Thank you for watching.